far as I'm concerned, this is the real gem of the west coast of Scotland, because this is temperate rainforest, one of the rarest environments to be found on the planet. In this series, I'm visiting some of Britain's most outstanding areas of natural beauty to explore the fascinating wildlife that has made these places their home. This time, I'm in Western Argyll, in Scotland. In these forests, you can find 500 rare species, 35 of which are conservation priorities. There's a really special name for this forest, the Celtic forest, and that's what I intend to explore while I'm here. And I'm hoping to see some rare lichens, spot a beautiful species of non-native deer, and witness how one of nature's most impressive DIY specialists is making itself at home, back in the Scottish landscape.
I would like to see the European beaver established right across the UK.
The West Highlands of Scotland is one of only 7 areas of temperate rainforest in the world. It gets more than 2,000 millimetres of rain a year, resulting in one of the most complex and dynamic ecosystems on Earth. Well, it's not called rainforest without good reason. There's a tremendous storm brewing. There's a real electric atmosphere at the moment. I like it, actually. All of the woods in this part of the world are bathed in water, wet, humid conditions warmed by the Gulf Stream. And that has a unique effect not only on the trees, but the things that grow upon them. It's really dark in here, not made any easier by the storm clouds up above. Now, at first glance, you might think that this is a managed hazel coppice. All these multi-stemmed trees around me, but it's not. This is actually hazel's natural form. It is a multi-stemmed tree. Some people say it coppices itself naturally, but you can see that here. And if you look really closely down at the base, you can find no evidence of any cut shoots that haven't grown in the middle of the bowl here. And you can see there's a lot of moss on here, but there are also lichens growing, and that's what I really want to explore while I'm here. I'm meeting a man who I hope can tell me more. Andy Acton is a local lichenologist. Andy, how are you doing?
Oh, hi there. Hi.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, you too.
I'm enjoying this hazelwood.
Oh, it's fantastic, isn't it?
Now, lichens, I have to explain exactly what they are.
Well, it's an association between a fungus and an algae.
And how do they help each other?
Well, basically, the algae photosynthesizes, so it produces energy for the fungus, and the fungus provides the home, prevents it from desiccating.
Provides the moisture?
Yeah.
So what's the importance of these lichens in this wood?
In this particular wood, you have over 250 species have been recorded on these hazels. Some of them are actually nationally scarce. I mean, this one here, these are pox lichens.
Aptly named, isn't it?
Yeah. And this one's quite nice. Script lichen, because the fruiting bodies of it look like little scribbles and scripts, almost like Arabic script.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's lovely. But these are very slow growing, aren't they?
People typically think of these as very, very slow growing because they're thinking more of Arctic environments. So they're thinking of boulders where things are colonising and growing very, very slowly, and they have effectively a very short growing season. Here, they have probably quite a long growing season because the winters are very mild.
So because of the warm conditions here on the west coast?
Yeah.
What I'm surprised at is how many different species of lichen there are just on this one stem.
Yeah. I mean, if you were just going to do a quick eyeballing count, you've got at least, you're going to be looking at least 15, 20 lichens on there.
I think that's astonishing. Slugs and snails feast on lichen.
and even aid its reproduction. They slowly transport fungal spores across the forest to land on algae, which enables lichen to reproduce. Amazing. Scotland has almost 1,000 species of mosses and liverworts. That's almost 90% of Britain's damp-loving organisms, and more than 60% of all European species.
This is one of the unique features you find in hazelwoods. You see that piece of wood stuck there. It's like someone's come along with some glue. But the glue is actually a fungus aptly named the glue fungus, and you can see the remains of it there. And that holds dead wood up in the branches here. It's quite interesting because when I'm looking for firewood, that really helps me out because it holds some of the dead sticks above the ground, so they're often drier.
We're right down on the sea. It's not a freshwater log. You can see here where an otter has been feeding on mussels. This iris has been browsed by a deer. Deer bite up to a horny pad and pull, so they leave a really untidy edge, not like scissors, but torn.
My favourite way to watch wildlife in forest is to sit and wait for it to come to me.
But of course there's one fly in the ointment, quite literally. That's the midge. It's the female midges that bite. They're drawn in by your breath. Once they bite you, they send out a pheromone that's a signal to others to join the party at your expense. So to deal with that, I always take with me a midge suit, something like this. It's good on a hot day because you can have short sleeves on, cover up, it's camouflaged as well, and then you can sit unmolested, quiet and still. That's the best way to see things here.
Red-breasted mergansers like rocky coasts in winter, but some also choose to nest here in spring. The female will lead her chicks to water 2 to 3 days after they hatch.
That's wonderful. On the rocks coming down to the grass there, two of my favourite species of deer. These are Celtic deer. You can see that from this distance, from that strong black stripe that runs down their spine. Now, the Celtic's not a native deer. It's been naturalised, but they're really very much here to stay now. What a lovely spot. If you were to drop me here with a blindfold on and say, where are you? I would never think Scotland. This feels to me like British Columbia, except the trees are different. But an area like this, with all these sedges, I would be expecting to see a bear. It feels so wild.
Sika deer in Britain originate from Japan. Their name in Japanese, shika, means deer. They're experts at detecting danger.
Wasn't that amazing? The deer in the lead, I think, was the youngest one.
and it got about halfway across, and then I think it winded us, despite the fact that the wind is coming this direction. Turned its attention to us, and then I think it heard the camera. The camera whirs almost imperceptibly, but to a sika deer's sharp ears in this super quiet Celtic forest, it stood out of the ordinary, unusual, enough to pique the interest of the deer and make it take the cautious path and retreat. That's what keeps them alive. You've got to respect them. Sika deer are without a doubt our most adaptable woodland deer species. They're full of personality. I love them.
I'm exploring the temperate rainforest in Argyll on the west coast of Scotland. I've come further inland in search of several species which have made a return to the Scottish landscape, including a pair of nesting osprey.
One of the adult birds come back with a massive crayfish. How they can fly with that is astonishing. Having a good look around. It's hard to think that these were once a common sight in Britain, but through persecution, by the time of the First World War, they'd become absent. Fortunately for all of us, in the 1950s, a pair of ospreys set up shop in Perthshire. And since that time, they've become one of the great success stories in British conservation, and largely due to the fact that ordinary people in Scotland took these birds to their hearts. They watch over them and keep them safe. It's as simple as that. Today they're spreading out and new nest sites are being encouraged for them to help them. It's a great sight and also a sound returning to the landscape. Now, you can't approach an osprey's nest, as I'm doing here, without a licence, because they are so heavily protected. This nest site is particularly exciting because it's the first osprey nest established on the west coast of Scotland since they became absent.
These dense forests on the west coast of Scotland are one of the strongholds for the pine marten. Now, over the years I've managed to bump into quite a few, but they're very unpredictable and certainly one of our most difficult mammals to see.
I'm fixing the camera trap on a forest trail of a pine marten that's become a regular visitor to an adjacent garden. That night, movement triggers the camera into record. It's enough evidence for our cameraman to stake out the garden the next evening. Pine martens are one of our rarest native mammals, but they're controversial. Like their smaller cousin, the weasel, they raid songbird nests for eggs, although this one seems more interested in what's on offer in this garden. But as quickly as it arrives, it's gone, back into the forest. One very special mammal has recently been reintroduced to Britain after an absence of 400 years. I'm joining Alan Bantic of the Scottish Beaver Trial, who's taking me to see the significant impact the world's second largest rodent has had on one wetland habitat.
Well, that's something you just don't see in Britain. That's fantastic. That flooded woodland.
In 2009, 3 beaver families were brought over from Norway and released into the lochs of Knapdale Forest.
What was here before the beavers?
Well, this was just a woodland, a wee birch and various other small trees, and there was a stream, and the beavers, having been released in the big loch behind us, decided that they much preferred the smaller one. So they came to live here, and then they started to dam the wee stream, and in so doing they raised the level of the loch. And then soon after that, the loch, having risen so far, found its way down through another gap, so they then dammed that, and they've now joined up the whole thing, and in the process they've increased the size of this loch perhaps 5 times.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, that's what they do. They slow the flow of water off the land. They hold it back and give other things a chance to live out their lives before the water goes down the burn.
Well, I think this is exactly what you want from the beaver. You get a wetland like this, and like all environments, it needs all the component parts there for it to work properly. And particularly in the case of keystone species. And the beaver is absolutely one of those.
So, Alan, what do you mean by a keystone species?
Well, a keystone species is one which is capable of modifying the habitat for its own uses, but in the process also improves matters for the other species that live there. And we're seeing an example of that here, where the beavers have cut down the wood, and what are they going to do with it? Well, some of it they will use for building, the dam or the lodge. Some of it they'll eat, some of it they'll store for winter food, and some of it will be left there to rot. That rotting wood creates ideal conditions for insects to breed, which is good for all the things that eat insects, and it's good for all the things that eat insects, and in that way the whole thing just blossoms. This is the start. It's really, really exciting.
My best chance of observing a truly wild beaver is in the early evening as they head out to feed. Beavers do much of their construction work after dark, but the evidence is easy to find.
That is fantastic. You see this piece of wood that's been cut here? That has not been cut with an axe. That has been chewed through by a beaver. You can see here quite clearly the very sharp gouge marks left by their teeth as they've chewed through it. Their teeth are very sharp. In fact, they sharpen them, they chip them, which is set your own teeth on edge to watch it being done. And native people who used to trap the beaver in the old days would collect the teeth and use them to make woodworking tools. They were that good. And they were used right up until the arrival of metal tools as part of the fur trade. That is a wonderful sight. The only thing now is to find some signs of the beaver themselves.
I don't want to disturb this one during its dinner time, so I'll settle down to watch from a distance.
Sight. You can see it swimming across now. It's marvellous the way they swim though. Their nose is up and their eyes, their heads are flat so they can keep their nose up when they're swimming and still see what they're up to.
In summer, beavers feed mainly on aquatic plants, grasses and shrubs. But later in the year, their sharp teeth will allow them to power through woody plants, which they'll store underwater. Beavers are five-fingered, which makes them extremely dexterous, and their long nails are important for digging and grooming.
There are two now. They're out there. Early evening patrol.
Beavers mate for life and live in family groups. Just a year after the 2009 reintroduction, the first beaver kits were born.
Seeing these beavers, though, it just tells me how possible it is to reintroduce a species, to correct wrongs done in the past. It gives hope. Hope that we won't mess everything up. Sometimes we do some good things, and I think this is likely to be one of them, because the beaver has such a profound impact on its environment to the benefit of other species.